you guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is one that I am very excited about. I pulled it on my Instagram and it was honestly just an idea that I came up with kind of randomly, and it's going to be how to live a less anxious lifestyle. I debated calling this a less anxious life versus lifestyle, and I'm gonna go with lifestyle because I think we have a lot of control over our lifestyle and the ways that we go about our days, but not so much on the bigger events of our life that might cause things like chronic anxiety. And so we're going with calling this how to live a less anxious lifestyle. Now, I have a lot of disclaimers about this before I begin because, as you guys know, if you follow my channel or know me in real life, I do have generalized anxiety disorder, so I am no stranger to needing therapy and medication to deal with anxiety. I take daily Lexapro, 20 milligrams a day. I love that medicine so much. It's helped me for years. And I also go to therapy a few times a month, and I have been in therapy for many, many years. So please know right off the bat that this video is not at all shaming therapy and medication or any other intensive type of treatment for anxiety and depression and other mental health conditions. I am someone who has seriously benefited from these over the years, and I still take medication and go to therapy. This video is more so for people who do have chronic anxiety, already taking medication and going to therapy and want additional tips for their lifestyle. This video is also for people who may not need things like medication and therapy, but are wanting to make some lifestyle adjustments to help with kind of everyday anxiety that flares up, but not necessarily having an anxiety disorder. Now, I think everyone should go to therapy. I love therapy, so I said don't need therapy. I think everyone low-key does, but anyways, that's a whole different rant. But let's go ahead and get into the top 10 tips I have for living a less anxious lifestyle. I feel like our world is not conducive to living without anxiety. I think the environment that we're in, the current cultural climate, political climate, just the hustle bustle American culture that many of us live in. I know not all of my viewers live in the States, but many of us do. And just living in our current day and age, it is so full of chaos and hurry and productivity culture, which is great sometimes, but not all the time. And we are constantly being told to hustle and work super hard and push ourselves to our limit and consume, whether it's food or products or media, and we are overstimulated and our attention spans are shortening, and all of these things that you hear about that are happening to us in our daily lives, that it can be so hard to figure out, why do I feel so chaotic all the time? Why do I feel all over the place and anxious? And oftentimes it really does come down to our environment and the way that we structured our lives, not conducive to a peaceful way of life. And so these tips are just some things that have really helped me over the years, and things I'm actively working on right now to kind of mitigate that everyday anxiety that will creep up that is beyond the control of my medicine and therapy. These are just kind of the everyday anxiety that I like to quell with some of these tips. The first tip I have is to eat food before I drink my coffee in the morning. This is so hard, and if you are at all in the hormone balancing world, you probably have heard this before of eating something when you first get up and not filling your body with caffeine and spiking your cortisol and all those things first thing in the morning. I kind of rolled my eyes at this at first, but over the past year or two, I have seriously felt such a difference in my anxiety and my panic feeling and jitters and the way I sweat in the morning by intentionally eating, even if it's just a couple bites of food before that first sip of coffee. Now, I'm not perfect about this every day, but my general flow right now is to have athletic greens, my supplements, and then have some bites of my breakfast and then start my coffee and kind of have my coffee while I eat. It makes my morning so much more calm. I'm not putting coffee on an empty stomach and feeling those first morning jitters that just really throw my blood sugar off and make me anxious first thing in the morning. So definitely recommend it if you are drinking your coffee on an empty stomach right now. Just making that switch, even if it's like a banana or something right before your coffee, it actually does wonders. My next thing is honestly probably the biggest tip I have is just to clean up your space. Having a clean environment to work in and to live in is so helpful in just clearing your mind. I know for me, I'm one of those people who I feel like my environment is often a reflection of my mental space. And so if my mental space is all over the place, I feel overwhelmed and chaotic, usually my environment reflects that. And so going and changing my environment, I don't feel like I'm able to sift through my mental space. Sometimes going and cleaning, tidying up a space doesn't have to be the whole apartment, maybe just the bedroom or the bathroom or the kitchen, and some area that's really bothering me, that often makes my mind feel so much calmer and more at ease and helps me actually get things done and be more productive, because I often feel like I can't get work done if I am sitting in a space that's really messy. Everyone is different with what type of environment they can tolerate, and so this might look different for you. For me, I usually clean my whole apartment, or at least tidy my whole apartment before getting started on work for the day, if I'm having a work from home type of day, and it just does wonders, honestly. Having a tidy space is honestly really a part of my first line attempt at calming the anxiety. Other things in that category would be things like making sure I've had enough to eat, to drink, getting some sunshine, movement, all of that, and making sure my space is tidy to try to see if I can calm that anxiety down. And that goes into our third tip, which is actually to go get outside more often. Going on little 10-15 minute walks throughout your day can really help just break up your day and break up your work into smaller chunks. If you have random tasks, you can work on something for an hour and then go on a 15-minute walk per se, and go outside, listen to a podcast, do a prayer walk, call a friend, listen to music, whatever you want to do, and just go do a couple blocks around your neighborhood and just get some fresh air and vitamin D. It always makes me feel so much better just to get moving, get my heart rate going a little bit, and get some fresh air. Often if I'm just in a weird headspace, I'm starting to feel sad or lonely or whatever, and those feelings are totally fine, of course, but if I feel like that's just not me, I want to kind of get out of a funk, I'll go for a little walk, and oftentimes it really makes me feel so much better. The fourth tip is create a low stimuli environment, and by that I mean creating an environment that is calming to your senses. For me, my husband and I live in town in our city, and that means we hear trains, ambulances, motorcycles, people going on their crazy cars and blasting music all the time, and so we don't really live in a low stimuli environment. But for me, I like to have a lot of control over our apartment environment, and so I like things to be tidy, like I mentioned before. I don't really play music. That's another tip I'll get into later. I am playing music, having instrumental jazz, piano music, classical music playing, fireplace going, one of those fun YouTube backgrounds that just has ambient noise playing can be really nice. Having calming colors around me, cozy blankets, a weighted blanket, things like that that just feel like they're calming to my senses and not overwhelming. So candles, for example, I don't buy candles with really strong fragrances. I usually will diffuse essential oils, and I only buy soy-based candles, ones that have scents that are very gentle and not like those really aggressive Bath and Body Works type scents that probably are full of, cancer-causing chemicals. So this might look different to you depending on where you live and what your preferences are, but I know for me, some triggers for anxiety are loud music, being in a place that's full of a lot of people with a lot of noise, really strong smells, things like that just kind of overwhelm me. And so if I can control those senses in my environment, that helps me feel a lot calmer. I'll sometimes even get up and leave a coffee shop or a place if it's too chaotic feeling. Justin and I, for example, had one of our family meetings. I think we actually filmed a piece of it for the Sunday Reset video at my favorite coffee shop, but it was so loud and really busy that morning that I actually asked if we could go home to finish our little family meeting because I was getting really overwhelmed. So practical example, just getting up and changing your scenery and going to a more calming place and places that feel safe and relaxing to you can be really helpful. Kind of going off on that, my fifth tip is actually to be very picky about what music you listen to. Now, this could be simply because you are sensitive to types of lyric or certain songs that make you feel a certain way or think about things that aren't very helpful to your overall mood or values or whatever. But for me, I really don't listen to that much music with lyrics anymore. Everyone is different. Some people really love music with lyrics, but if I am doing a different task, like I am studying or I am doing editing or something that involves words, I like to listen to music that's just instrumental. If I'm tidying or driving, sometimes I'll listen to music with words. But I realized over time that if I was doing something involving words, like I said, editing, listening to my own voice, watching something else like TV or reading something for school, I like to have additional stimuli that has words in it. And so kind of balancing your inputs is one of my favorite things to help with anxiety. That leads into my sixth tip, which is doing an input inventory. Now, what I mean by this is kind of taking stock of what inputs you're putting into your brain in terms of your senses, like I mentioned previously about noting your environment, what makes you feel more anxious or less anxious. Also looking at what type of media you're consuming, including TV shows, movies, books, social media, what type of accounts you're following, and what things are more likely to trigger anxiety. For me, for example, I've learned over the years, I can't do scary movies. I can't do scary movies, scary shows, anything that feels like it's hitting too close to home or is really grabbing grasping on fears that I have. Like, I will not watch something about cheating, for example. Like, Justin and I do not watch or read things about affairs or cheating because it just makes us really uncomfortable, frankly. And I can't watch horror movies. I can't watch things where kids are injured or hurt or killed. These are just examples, things that really unsettle me. So that's just a no-go for me across the board. I also don't read or watch anything that is overly sexual or vulgar. I used to be a big Bachelor fan, but I actually don't watch it anymore because it just makes me kind of uncomfortable with all the sexual content. Same goes for books. I read one smut book once, and oh my gosh, it's a Colleen Hoover book. No shame if you love her stuff and you read her, that's totally fine. This is just my personal opinion. I felt so icky after reading that book because it definitely had a lot of sexual content, and I didn't really know that going into it, and I tried to skip over it, but like, you also kind of need some plot points, and so I like skimmed it. Anyways, I felt so gross after it, and it just did not make me feel good about myself. It did not edify me in any way, and so that's a boundary for myself where I do not read romance books or books that are overly sexual. Same goes for social media. I am very, 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 very picky about who I follow on social media. I feel like sometimes you'll get the advice of follow lots of different accounts with different opinions and things that challenge you and make you uncomfortable. That's not what I do personally. I think there are ways to challenge yourself intellectually and to expose yourself to other points of view in a way that doesn't feel anxiety provoking and aggressive like social media can. And so I really follow my friends on social media. I follow people that I agree with and look up to on social media. And I think there's a balance there, right, of exposing yourself to other ideas in the form of like articles and news and things like that. And I'm not perfect at that by any means, but for me, I like social media to feel like a safe place where I know that I'm getting on and I'm seeing calming content. I'm not seeing aggressive content. If people are posting overly political things, I mute them. I just mute them because I don't think we should get our news from social media. So I really, really take heart in making social media a calming place for me and my brain in terms of the feed that I open up to and the people that I'm interacting with, because honestly, I don't like to be surprised by anxiety when I'm living with it every day. I like to be very intentional. If I'm gonna go on Instagram for 30 minutes a day or something like that, I wanna be out walking into a place filled with little landmines. That is my take on that. You might disagree with that, but that's just what's worked for me with anxiety. Obviously, you can't control what other people post, and so your friend might post something that triggers your anxiety. You know, that's life, that happens. But for me, I am very careful about who I follow, who I mute, who I don't mute, all those things, because honestly, I just don't like adding to anxiety. So that's my take on social media. All right, number 7. This is probably one that you've heard many times before, but this one is to have set times for checking your phone and or notifications. So often you'll hear the advice to not look at your phone for the first hour of the day or the last hour of the day, just to help with routines, discipline, anxiety, all of that. And I agree with that for the most part. I will say sometimes I can get legalistic about that, where I'm like, oh my gosh, if I touch my phone in the first hour of the day, I've ruined it. And I can get very black and white about these types of rules. So for me, I am fine with looking at my phone. I'll maybe swipe up and look at notifications, see if there's any urgent texts, things like that. But I think it's wise for me at least to not go on things like social media, YouTube analytics, email, all of that first thing in the morning before I have quiet time. So having those set times can be really helpful. Maybe looking at notifications for a certain 10-minute block of time in the morning, and then again on your lunch break, and then again in the evening a couple times would be a helpful strategy for you. Number 8 is to try to tackle the most stressful tasks you have on your list before the easier ones. This is called eat the frog principle, if you will. This is something that Justin, my husband, taught me, and it is something that I don't like to do because it's not fun. And I would rather do the easy tasks first to get going on work sometimes. And sometimes that works best. Like, you need some momentum, you're struggling, so you do a few easy tasks, and then that kind of gets you going and gives you the motivation and momentum to start the harder tasks. But oftentimes we just have to bite the bullet and do the harder task first that's on your to-do list, get it done, and you feel so much better. You're not like thinking about it all day long. This is one of the reasons why I like to work out in the morning. Lately, I've actually been doing a lot of evening workouts just with my clinical schedule right now, but I always feel so much better when I do morning workouts because it gets it done. I feel so good the rest of the day. I feel like I've gotten my movement in. I feel healthy. I feel more motivated to choose healthier habits throughout the day. So sometimes getting that big hard thing done first thing in the morning just makes you feel so awesome for the rest of the day. Number 9 is one that I am using a lot right now, and that is connecting with people. Like, that's a really obvious one. We all need to be social, to feel connected, like we're seen and known and loved and just in community and doing life with people. It's so, so important to our well-being, spiritually, socially, emotionally, physically, even all the things. But it can be hard. I'm in a season right now where I do not have a lot of time to be with friends. Our small group's not meeting right now. I have a really busy grad school schedule, and so it's just trickier to be more intentional with seeing my girlfriends. And so I got lunch with a friend today, and that was actually really helpful. We had that planned out for a few weeks, and maybe it takes several weeks of planning to actually get something on the calendar, but being intentional with having that social time is so helpful when you're feeling lonely in a slump, but you know that you're going to spend 2 hours with a friend. It really just helps boost your mood and helps me with anxiety a lot, honestly. I feel like oftentimes when we're feeling anxious, we automatically think, oh, isolate, go spend time alone, take a self-care day, be away from people. And that can be helpful a lot of the times. Often we also just need to be around people. If I'm having an anxious day and I've been alone all day and I'm feeling more and more anxious, I probably need to go see my husband or call a friend or call my mom and go on a walk and talk to someone. And that usually 9 times out of 10 is what I need. Like, I just need to be around people. And even for my introverts out there, I am one of you as well. It really, really helps just to reach out to someone, even if it's over text or a quick phone call. Even if you have social anxiety, oftentimes we just need to be around other humans. All right, and our last tip is to connect with God before connecting with our phones and or work. I know I just said that I personally think it's totally okay to look at your phone before you do other things in your day, but I do think it can be really wise to quickly turn your alarm off on your phone, look at it for a second, and then put it down and go about making your bed, washing your face, getting dressed, making breakfast, quiet time, coffee, all of that before starting work, before responding to text messages and opening email and all of that. I did that this morning and it was honestly really helpful. I do this maybe a third to a half the time. I'm not perfect at it at all. I would love to do this all of the time, but it's been hard figuring out that routine, being married, and also figuring out who's gonna set the alarm on their phone, where are we gonna keep the phones, all that kind of thing. So that's just real life right now, but I really, really think it's very helpful to actually practice the priority of spending time with God before those other things. Just to tell your brain that it is more important to sit down and talk to God than it is to respond to my friend's text. That ordering of priorities practically in the way that you spend your time in the morning, I think really helps to develop discipline and strong habits and to make it more natural to your brain to actually gravitate towards spending time with God than to gravitate towards your phone. Definitely want to work on this. It's really hard, I know for me at least, if I jump into work or into my phone and I tell myself, oh yeah, I'll get to quiet time later in the day, and it just never happens. Like, I have to do it first thing in the morning and sit down with God before I engage in those other things, or else it's just not gonna happen. So my 10 tips for living a less anxious lifestyle. I hope these were helpful for you. I'd love if you watched this video and got to this point, if you would comment down below which was your favorite tip, and if you have any other tips that you would add, please add them below. This list is not exhaustive by any means. I actually made a list of over 30 tips and I just narrowed down to my top 10. So happy to make more of these videos later and give more specific like nutrition tips, exercise, other lifestyle things related to combating anxiety. That is something I would love to talk about more. So just let me know if you guys want to see more of that. And as always, I appreciate you watching my videos and supporting my channel. So feel free to like and subscribe if you would like to. And I will see you in our next video. Bye guys.